Okay. Do you want to do the hi, I'm Omar at the beginning? Or?
Yeah, let's get it out of the way. خلاص. Hi, I'm Omar. I'm a multidisciplinary visual artist.
Tell me about the Rizzo print.
The Rizzo prints were my first art residency in Amsterdam, and they're part of a bigger project that I'm still working on about color and how color reacts specifically with the urban environment, but also how it shapes how we see the world. So the prints were all of the same dune, but printed in different colors, and based on how these colors change, your perception of the object itself changes, whether it's in the time of day, or it can be a green hill, or something on the sunset, stuff like that. So it's about how color literally defines what we're looking at, and that was kind of the starting point to go from that to what color is in the urban space, or within cities, or in the urban landscape.
Color movement a big thing for you in your work?
Oh, it started off again with this project and kind of opened the floodgates. But I'm always a bit conflicted with color, because it's one of those things where I don't know if I'm good at it, if I keep trying to experiment as much as possible, and that experimentation leads to really cool results. It started off from like an insecurity and ended up being one of the main defining aspects of the work I do and the stuff that I do. Actually, this is the second phase of the color thing. So I took Morocco as a case study, because Morocco has a lot of cities that are very chromatically defined. Chefchaouen is very blue, Casablanca is very white, Marrakesh is very red. Taking those pictures and shifting the colors around, so to kind of show how color defines a city as well. Like you can define an entire cityscape based on color. And what does that mean if you remove the color from that cityscape? Exactly, which is weird, because you can't define a city by its color. It's ridiculous. You can't reduce it to something so small. But once you shift it, immediately it becomes something else or somewhere else. If you imagine, مثلا, Cairo, instead of being beigey and gray, is, I don't know, very bright blue. It shifts what you're looking at. It shifts the identity of the city itself. But also, you cannot say, Cairo is beige and gray. It has its own history, its own people, its own interactions, its own stories. I find that super interesting, how all of this can easily shift once you change one of these parameters. Or you just shift color, and it becomes a completely other thing. So that's what I'm trying to find out. So my theory is a city like Chefchaouen or Jaipur in India or whatever, where blue, for example, is a very common color. That's why it's used in a lot of hospitals and a lot of schools. If you constantly live surrounded by blue, does that make you calmer as a person in general? And what happens if I take you and put you in a place that is completely red? Does that make you more irritated? Does that change anything about your behavior? So I'm also very interested in this psychosocial aspect of color when it comes to urban design, because it's an entire city that is built in that way. It's an entire community that's like that.
Often you feel like people get what you're trying to say or understand it completely differently,
both. I'm always curious to know what other people think. I hate to explain my work. Like if somebody asks me, hey, what does this mean? Or what is this supposed to be? I'm like, what is it for you? How do you feel about it? How do you interpret it? And most of the time it's actually super different interpretations. And I love that. I love the multiplicity of meanings that one singular thing can have. I think it allows for more interesting views of the world. A lot of people have reinterpreted my work or seen layers to my work that I never saw, but that actually add to it in a way that I love. Like it enhances the entire message of it. There's a series that I did called The New Gods, and it was all about reinterpreting ancient Egyptian deities in modern times, so seeing what the value of what that value is and how that's changed or muted through time. And I remember I was showing it to a friend of mine who's Serbian, and his interpretations, because he came from a completely different context, were very different, or they weren't very different. He saw a lot more in the actual work than I had intended. And allows for something that I think is super cool, which is I love to hear other people describe what I've done, because what they take away and how they see it is usually a more in-depth version of what I'm trying to do somehow. I'm terrible at describing my own work, but whenever I hear somebody else describe it, I'm like, yes, this is exactly it. This is exactly what I wanted to do.
Have you had to ever reconsider everything you're doing in such a scale?
Yeah, a few pieces I thought were completely genius. People were like, Omar, this is, no, stop doing that. So, but it allows, I think, for more interesting results. And this criticality is super important, because if you stick to what you know, you're not really growing. You're just sticking to what you know. For now, it like whenever I think I have the solution and somebody tells me that's not it, it forces me into thinking of other creative solutions. And so there's a lot of lateral thinking going on that I'm grateful for. I need to create. I've always had that, where I need to make something, I need to produce something, I need to show something. Like, I can't be in a, like one of the periods of my life where I'm most depressed, or where things like I'm not feeling okay, are the periods in my life where I'm not actually making anything, you know, where I'm just on the couch all day. So this is it's important for me to make it. Showing it is the natural result of that. If I make something and I keep it for myself, then it's not really there, you know. It's the, you know, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, does it make a sound? So I need people to see that, and through that mirroring, where I'm doing something that is projected on the canvas and then that is reprojected or remirrored in someone else, and I can see how I'm perceived or how I am from a third eye, kind of. And it allows me to find out a lot more about myself and my practice. I keep telling people, or I keep telling myself at least, that that my work isn't self-referential. So I don't put my own feelings or my own experiences or my own things into the work. It's not personal in that sense. It's more, it deals with more abstract ideas or concepts or something that is external, right? Until somebody again pointed out how all of these projects that I'm doing have a direct impact either on what I'm doing or on my personal beliefs or my own history or how I grew up or what I studied or what I did or my relationship to my family or what, yani, there's a lot that's seeping through that I thought wasn't there. So it's interesting. That's why I think I show what I do, because it allows me to grow. It allows me to have criticality about myself, but also to grow.
Is there too much influence on your work that's not yours sometimes?
I don't think I allow for things to influence my work so much, because it's still a deeply personal thing. At the end of the day, I'm sitting alone and I'm working on the thing alone. And it's me and my own head and my own thoughts. I can take a lot of people's comments or criticism or advice into consideration, but then it blends into what is me, you know. If you give me some advice and I think it makes sense and I'm convinced, it becomes part of me. It like melts into what is me. So it could be there, but it could also be a part of, you know, this constant processing, this constant growing. I don't think there's anything I've done where somebody's influence was too predominant on it. Or if I've ever done, then I don't claim it as my own. I'm like, this is not my baby, you know. I just found this on the doorstep, you know, on my doorstep. This is not the kid.
Fair enough.
Professionally speaking, and I studied illustration, but that was also creating. I was always the kid in the back of class drawing the teachers rather than listening to what they're saying. So I've always, my hand has always been kind of working. Professionally speaking, I would say I've been a multidisciplinary visual artist since 2017, 2016.
How has your work changed in that time?
I think technically it has changed because I've started experimenting with a lot more mediums and techniques. In terms of content or the work itself, I would say it's become more self-aware in a way. I thought I didn't have any specific themes or specific things that I wanted to work on or that interest me, but the more I do, the more I see a lot of things coalesce. And a lot of my work has to do with identity and identity making and the psyche and memories, and especially body memories and how that relates to the body itself. So yeah, it's a lot to do with identity making and the stories we tell ourselves to exist or to define ourselves. And I think this has been kind of the common thread through all of the different stuff. So if we're talking about color talks, masalan, the color dunes, it's about how a city identifies itself, or how color identifies an object. This one, the growth series, was something that was done during the first COVID lockdown. I was in France at the time, for a lot of time alone, not going out, and it allowed for a lot of introspection and a lot of thinking about how you are, how you're doing, what you need, a lot of self-care, and attention to your own mental health. It was interesting to see how different, a lot of my friends, they reacted to the lockdown differently. And so it was interesting to see how they grew, or how they dealt with it, and how some needed more time, whereas some flourished, or some were struggling. So all of this, I feel, is a lot more present in the work that I'm doing, and because it's self-aware, I feel it has a bigger impact, or a more direct impact, because it knows what it is. It's not lost or confused, or wandering around, not knowing what to do. I feel it allows for more things when you have your own space, when you have a space that is your own, that you can change and you can up or make beautiful براحتك بطريقتك بذوقك. It's I think so. I think any kind of independence is linked with experimentation. And حتى even trying to cook something and failing miserably, even within that very small category.
Do you at all feel stifled to create here?
شوية, but not in the way you'd expect. It's more logistical than anything. مثلا printing, making prints with naked women on them, I would assume would create a problem. But when I went to the print house and gave them the stuff, they were like, فتح وقال لي الفايل ده مقاسه كام في كام، عايز تطبع على ورق ايه، اوكي. طبعا I picked it up later, and nobody said anything, nobody did anything. That was cool برضو, it was interesting how the things you'd expect to be problematic actually aren't, but the things that you'd assume aren't problematic at all are massive issues, massive faux pas. It's restricting ومش restricting في نفس الوقت, if that makes sense. It's restricting, but not in the places you'd expect.
Do you think you subconsciously create for a specific audience, whether it's foreign or Asian?
I feel I create for myself. That makes sense. I always put myself as the main audience. Based on what I would like to see is what I'm doing. Kind of. It's a very self-centered approach. But I always think of it as, okay, I'm doing it's a thing that goes out into the world, and then it's its own thing. So I create it how I see it should fit to me, to my eyes. And then once it's out, it's out. Whoever sees it or whoever deals with it, then that's the audience. And every single person has a different experience to the same object. And it allows for different readings of the same object, and it allows for the object to be a multitude rather than a singularity. And I feel this is beautiful. To me, making it is a false term. I believe if I ever think that at some point I have made it, أنا خلاص كده وصلت, I have achieved what I wanted to achieve, I feel إن اللحظة ديت هي تبقى اللحظة I become completely useless and completely shit. Because اللحظة دي معناها إن أنا خلاص I'm at the top of the mountain, there's nowhere else to go, I'll stagnate. And if I'm not growing, if I'm not thinking laterally, if I'm not thinking of other options, if I'm not being inspired, لو ما فيش حاجة بتكبرني, then خلاص, then I'm stagnating and I'm failing. Then I'm rehashing the same stuff over and over, and I'm no longer part of the conversation. I'm no longer part of the context. I'd like to take credit for this amazing insight, but it wasn't mine. I remember in college, in our last year, كنا كلنا متربين about this notion of making it and being something. عشان خلاص we were going to graduate and we were going to become our own things and professionals وكده. We were شوية obsessed about becoming, this thing. And one of my friends asked a professor, and he asked him the exact same question. He asked him, how do you know you've made it? And he gave that response. And that response بالنسبة لي was like, بس on the spot ثبتنا كلنا. But ever since that moment, I'm like, خلاص, this is it. I'm in a constant state of growth, and the day I stop growing is the day I die.